Well, welcome, bonjour, everyone, to the Passive House Canada Building Conversations webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started right away. So from here, I'm going to pass the reins over to our CEO, Chris Ballard. Chris?
Well, thanks, Deb, and thanks for the introduction, and welcome everyone to December edition of Building Conversations.
We're seeing a lot of people moving out in the United States,
but we have a great guest today, Aaron Smith, and you'll learn a little bit more about the Energy and Environmental Building Alliance in the coming conversation. But before we go too much further, let me just share my screen, and I always like to do a bit of an intro to what's happening today. First of all, for those who don't know me, Chris Ballard, I've had a varied political career.
We've done some analysis on by
5 years, and I started my career many years ago as a journalist. And one of the things that that I know is that Canadians are asking for healthy, comfortable, climate resilient, affordable homes, expertise in tracking what was carbon footprint. So that's what I advocate for on behalf of the building industry here in Canada and passive house practitioners across the country. Once again, glad you're here to join us. Hopefully at the end of the month, you Passive House. If you don't know, we are a membership-based social enterprise. We're an advocacy organization. We provide education and professional development, technical services, and we have members, staff, and instructors located right across the country. Our mission is threefold. It's to make zero-emission buildings known and adopted by government, industry, and the public. We support government and industry in the transition to high-performance buildings through education, certification, and policy development. And we promote the Passive House Institute building standard, which is globally recognized as the highest level building.
About the data and collection.
And why are we doing this?
in the zero.
We got one Earth and we have to treat her right.
And actually, to add on to that as well,
A year ago to December, in another time, in another place, pre-COVID, of course. But the majority of Canadians said the country needs to be doing more to address the urgent threat of climate change. We've taken that to heart. That's always been our message, and we're addressing the climate crisis through high performance buildings. And we have the ear of government, we have the ear of industry, and we have the ear of the public. They're solidly behind us as we move ahead. More about that later. Here, former elected, which isn't that great? You know, when we think about Toronto's
It says, no, we wanted to push even. I was not on the list.
Vancouver are from buildings, whereas globally 32% of GHG emissions are from buildings. Today's season and Passive House designer consultants are leading the charge together with other great cities and towns across a few months. So this will be like Victoria and Hamilton to address building emissions through retrofits and green building standards. So there's lots of really exciting things taking place and happening right across the country. And I like to remind people that the world's lowest energy, lowest emission buildings are also healthier, more comfortable, affordable, resilient, and contribute to a sustainable future. If you're part of the Passive House group, you certainly know this. It's more than just energy efficiency for us. It's also about health and comfort. So today's guest, and I'll invite Aaron to turn his camera on in a minute. Today's guest is Aaron Smith, the CEO of the Energy and Environmental Building Alliance, EEBA, as they're known. Aaron is the CEO, and it represents a community of more than 50,000 builders and stakeholders across North America who are real early adopters and innovators in driving sustainable transformation of the home building industry. Aaron has more than 25 years of experience in home construction, building products, sustainability, not-for-profit board leadership, and he's worked for a wide variety of companies. So we'll get to a conversation with Aaron in a few minutes. But what's interesting about today's, especially interesting about today's presentation, is that Aaron's group is located in the United States. They do have members in Canada. We'll be hopefully doing some work together in the months ahead. I think Aaron is the first person we've had on the show from who's not a Canadian organization, but they are such an interesting group that I wanted to bring them to you here today, so you could hear about what they're doing firsthand, because it's very exciting. So before I go any further, I want to welcome you to Passive House and talk about a little bit. And I know most of you on the webinar know about Passive House buildings, but let me just tell you a little bit about a Passive House building. Its attributes include it's a highly insulated envelope, it's airtight, it has high performance windows that are properly installed. It has a thermal bridge-free design. It has solar orientation with external shading, high performance ventilation with heat recovery. That's really key, the heat recovery part. There is built-in quality assurance when you build to Passive House Institute standards. There is a built-in quality assurance. So what do you do when you build with these attributes? Well, you get a healthy building, you get a comfortable building, you get a climate resilient building, and you get a building that uses about 90% less operational energy than a code-built building, and a retrofitted building of up to 75% less energy use than the building it replaced. So these are super energy efficient buildings. They're getting very close to zero energy buildings, and we know that Passive House Institute is standards. It's the globally recognized leader in building standards. There's many paths to zero energy, and we support them all, quite frankly, because it's important that we get there. But with Passive House Canada, we lean towards Passive House Institute. So here's something that so many people don't realize here in Canada, that our ancestry is Canadian. This is the Saskatchewan Conservation House. We had the pleasure of having the engineer who designed this house for the provincial and federal governments back in 1977. We had Harold Orr at our summit last week to present our former CEO with the Harold Orr Award for his work on behalf of Passive House Canada. This building you're looking at, built in 1977 by Harold Orr and co-workers. This was an era of the OPEC oil embargo, when governments were worried that Canadians would be able to keep warm over the winter months if our oil supply from the Middle East was cut off. They did some amazing work. This building is still being used today, still being lived in today, and many of the attributes which were being shared around the world. So this wasn't the first high performance house of its ilk, but it certainly was one of the ones that set the standard, helped set the standard for Passive House Institute, and it's been acknowledged as such, as being one of the ancestors. So moving ahead, why don't we have Aaron on the line? Aaron, I will turn on our screens and our microphones, and I'll turn off the presentation, and the two of us can begin a conversation. So welcome to Building Conversations. Glad to have you here.
Chris, I'm honored to be here, and I'm in Minneapolis, and
yes,
in Minnesota we consider ourselves the 4th Canadian territory. So you're as close as you could get by inviting a U.S. person. And
very good.
I speak Canadian as well. So.
Oh, okay, you speak Canadianese, eh?
That's right.
That's great to hear. Well, thanks again for being on the show. When we first chatted many months ago, I think we hit it off, and our conversation probably lasted far longer than we had anticipated, but that was okay. So great to have you on the show. let's start off, Aaron, by having you tell us a little bit about EEBA, a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at EEBA.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think it's kind of a shared, I love what you said about the shared history. So EEBA started in 1982, again, during the oil crisis in North America. It was a group of builders from Canada, the United States, and Scandinavia that came together in Minnesota and wanted to build more energy efficient buildings. And if you
Okay.
look back, some of the best code in the countries early on were in Minnesota and Canada that came out of that original group.
Right. That came out of that original group. So today, how large? You have 50,000 members today.
Yeah,
And,
so we've been around about 38 years, of course.
Right.
We've got about 50,000 members. That's on the mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
It's builders, architect, designers, energy raters. There are some homeowners. So really, we try to have all of the stakeholders involved.
Wow. Yeah.
We want an environment where people can come together and learn and share and collaborate.
Right, right. So you have many of the same types of people and professions represented in your organization as we do here at Passive House Canada. So that's an interesting commonality. And how about yourself? How did you end up at EEBA? When did you join that organization?
Yeah, I joined in January, January 8th of this past year, and
Okay.
everything was looking great on January the 8th. And then I always, I'm an old hockey player, so I'll throw in some hockey analogies for my friends. But on March 12th, when the NHL paused, everything stopped. For us. So obviously, it was a very challenging year. Like you, we had to pivot to digital and online.
Right.
And our summit was in September in Denver, but we weren't able to go. We did everything virtually. And
Right.
I think it was very well received.
That's good. That's good. And like you, I started probably a couple of months before you, mid-November of 2019, and everything was going swimmingly until March. But when I think I look back on it, and I think we've come out of it a stronger, more focused organization with that pivot to online digital services, and we're able to serve organizations, individuals, and businesses in parts of Canada that we just couldn't get to before. So perhaps that's a good thing.
Yeah, Chris, I agree with you. I really think sometimes transformation takes a burning platform to really get people motivated. And unfortunately, the pandemic created that type of urgency. And I think it's really great what Passive House Canada and EEBA have been able to do. And I think we're living our mission in a better way of being able to outreach to more and more people.
Right. Right. And yeah, I mean, the geographic borders aren't the same barrier. Time zones can be a bit of a barrier, but geographic borders aren't quite the barrier that they once were. So can you give us some specifics about what EEBA does? What do you do on a day-to-day basis, a week-to-week basis?
Yeah, well, let me give your audience a little bit of a frame of reference.
Perfect.
So what we do at EEBA is, again, we want to bring in the innovators, early adopters, and put them on the path. So if you think about, we call it the Gateway to Zero, and we have a course called the EEBA Path to Zero. And we really want to meet a builder need. So I was talking to a builder yesterday. They haven't figured out the Energy Star program yet, and they want help getting Energy Star together. But what we want to do is put them in a group that kind of creates that momentum, and they say, you know what, I can do Energy Star, which I understand is available in Canada as well.
Right. Yep.
Then really the next step might be Indoor Air Plus program, which is not available in Canada yet, but perhaps in the future.
Sure.
Then perhaps they'll go to the Zero Energy Ready Home program.
Mm-hmm.
And then really we want them to graduate into a great program like Passive House. So it's a little different in that we're somewhat agnostic to, we believe deeply in third-party certified programs, that the energy raters or certification certification organizations can be incredible quality assistance and assurance to the builder or to the homeowner that's going to get that house. But we just want them on the pathway, and we want to assist them every step along the way. So a lot of that assistance, Chris, is done through online training and education. And we do have a builder benchmark group where we bring together kind of the top 20 across the United States and Canada to learn and share from each other.
Very good. And I think that's a very wise path that you're following in terms of getting builders to near zero, then to net zero. And I think there are lessons there for Passive House Canada. I know that that while we preach the Passive House Institute standard, we also have to recognize that we have to help government, we have to help industry, manufacturers, and we have to help builders move to that net zero over time. They're not, they may just not be able to do it right away. There may be situations where they can't go from building what they're building to net zero. And like you, we have to we help them along the way, and we provide them with an awful lot of training to the Passive House standard, because it's our belief that if you understand the Passive House Institute standards, you can build to any standard that is out there, quite frankly. So yeah, so we've had some success from that, and I'm encouraged by the path that you've taken. That it's no finger wagging, just let's all work together to get to that net zero.
That's right. I think that's a good case, is that we don't do the finger wagging. We want to bring people in that want to learn and share. Right. And I'd also say that we try to look at the triple bottom line, right? So for builder, we're looking at the planet impacts and the building science and what they should do. But right. We're also trying to engage them at the people level and the profit level, so that they're a sustainable builder for the long term. If these are the folks that are doing it correctly, we want them to prosper. We want them to build more homes. We want them to have better access to finance, better access to perhaps building permits in a quicker manner, things like that.
Yeah. No, it sounds like we have a lot of similar challenges. So tell me, what sort of work do you do with governments? What levels of government do you work with? How do you try and influence what government is doing? What are some of the big challenges?
Well, if anyone can influence the U.S. government, I want to know who they are. I was talking before we came on, but where we intersect with the governments is really at the Department of Energy level with the Energy Star and Zero Energy Ready program, with the EPA in the United States and the Indoor Air Plus program, and then with some of the government labs and National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado, the Pacific Northwest National Labs, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. So there's some great research that's happening. The Cold Climate Research Center up in Fairbanks, Alaska. So I would say that we're more on the academia building science side of working with the U.S. government, and then how can we get those programs out and adopted. And if you take Energy Star, Chris, I mean, that's been a phenomenal program. For the amount of greenhouse gas emissions it has eliminated in the United States, it's amazing what it's done.
Right. Especially in those areas, of course. So you're talking the Energy Star house, or for the entire Energy Star program? I mean, who buys an appliance today without checking to see that it's not Energy Star certified, for example? Great marketing, and it really came at a time where people were starting to think about their energy usage.
That's right. And I think that program is a good first step for builders, because it has such powerful brand awareness with the consumer. They're used to an Energy Star laptop or light bulb or refrigerator.
Right.
Energy Star home is a great first step.
Right. Good. And so you have all of these Energy Star appliances and lighting. What about the space that you put it in, right? And so it seems a natural progression that you would move to the house to get people thinking about that. Here in Ontario and a number of our provinces with with carbon-free or pretty much carbon-free electricity, the importance of low energy consumption appliances maybe is a bit reduced, except as a pocketbook issue. But certainly we have a number of provinces, a number of jurisdictions that rely on coal to create their electricity. So anything we can do to reduce their appliance consumption is a positive. And just taking the marketing muscle, we'll say, of the Energy Star and moving it into buildings, into homes is a good way to get people thinking about what they're doing with their personal space as well.
That's right.
So all good. So you've talked about, the focus you have is more around the academic side of helping research institutions do work on energy efficiency and zero energy buildings. How do you help roll those programs out? Do you work with regional governments or state governments, local governments to educate them?
Yeah, I would say more that it's, we're primarily a North American organization. So it's
Right.
really across the US and Canada. We get an occasional builder from Europe or New Zealand or Australia.
Right.
It's really driving an awareness of those programs. And then it's other builders maybe cutting through the noise of the program and say, this is really what you need to do. This is how you change your specifications. This is some of the technologies that you're going to use in the home. So how do you make it more approachable for a builder that, they're building, particularly now, we're building as many houses as we can. I've got to make it digestible for them. And again, move them along the spectrum so that hopefully we can get them to Passive House as they graduate.
Yes. And that would be fantastic if at the end of the day they were building to Passive House Institute standards and we're at that near or near zero or zero energy for sure. I think one of the things we sort of say a bit tongue in cheek is that it's not rocket science, people. It is building science, but it's not rocket science. The second observation I made very early in my days with Passive House Canada was how sharing this community is. That I have companies that are butting heads by day, fighting for contracts, and yet in the evening over a cup of coffee on a webinar are working together to solve common problems, whether it be about overheating or ventilation or whatever. And it's an amazing thing to see. I really haven't found this in any other sector, but I have builders helping builders. We see engineers helping engineers, architects with architects, etc. And more homeowners who have bought a passive house excited to share their journey with their neighbors and their communities. So it really is an exciting sector to be in. It sounds like it's very much the same with your organization, that there's a lot of sharing of knowledge and how to.
That absolutely, I think that's the secret of it. It's, in many ways, as EEBA or Passive House, we're curating together. But if you can create that sharing community, and I particularly like what you said, Chris, is with our addition of Team Zero as part of the alliance with EEBA, that we've done more outreach to consumers now to try to drive a pull-through awareness, because I think we talked about this when you and I talked on the phone, but if you can get a homeowner that's going to build a passive home, then it pulls it through the architect and the builder and the subcontractors, and they've all learned together. So I think that pull-through strategy is really the, where we all want to get to, right?
Yeah. And I want to learn a little bit more about Team Zero in a second, but you had a great blog on your website from November, The Virtue of Disruption. Can you walk us through your thinking around that for a minute? Because I found it quite delightful.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. Sometimes you put yourself out there in a blog, and I think I only got one negative comment. So.
Oh, well, only one. You weren't trying hard enough then. You know that.
That's right. I wasn't on the edge enough.
Yeah.
I think there's really a feeling that, particularly the millennials and the Gen Y consumers, we're seeing a lot of people moving out of cities and into the suburbs, that there's this readiness through what we're seeing on the vehicle side. So we were fighting this battle with vehicles. I don't know if you recall the mile per gallon or mile per kilometer battle that was being fought in the United States, but we were fighting a battle over miles per gallon when Tesla was fighting a different war completely.
Yeah.
And it has been such a quick change across North America and Canada to electrification. And electrification has become really attractive to people because it was better performance in the automotive industry. So what I was suggesting is that you could have one thing we don't see a lot of is the really big production builders participating with EEBA or with Passive House. And my contention was that there are Elon Musks out there in our industry that may upset and really radically disrupt the entire home building industry across North America, much for the better, and that the consumer has already been primed for it. And in fact, they want to buy an electrified home. And if they understand the zero health impacts, the zero energy, and the zero carbon opportunity that electrified homes offer, I don't think they'll be able to build homes fast enough.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That really is the virtue of disruption. I sometimes wonder why governments are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to extend a pipeline, natural gas pipelines into areas of Canada when we already have transmission lines there, and it might be much cheaper to electrify than to bring methane gas in to heat and drive the economy in those communities. But that's for another discussion with policymakers down the road, perhaps. And I know in Canada the uptake of homes that are built in factories and pre-assembled and shipped out. We have one builder I'm aware of who has orders for about 200 homes. And that's just one of them. And I have a feeling we'll look back 2, 3, 4 years from now, and we'll see sort of the traditional stick builders who build on site, build entire communities at once. Will turn around and say, where did they come from? Why did we see them coming? And kick themselves that they weren't on the bandwagon at the right time.
I'll take the counterpoint to that, even though I think I agree with both sides. But one of the difficulties, and I don't know if it's the same in the provinces as it is in the States, but we have a different regulation for each city.
Yes.
And for each county and for each state. And almost every home that's built is somewhat of a one-off. And while I'm a big fan of modular, I think that there's a cost premium that needs to be taken out of it before we see wide adoption. And it's kind of akin to the batteries, right? The batteries were the problem with electric cars. Can we get the premium down on the panel systems to start to see a wider adoption? And I toured some of the structural insulated panel plants. There are some great manufacturers out there. There is a lot of money being invested in this space. There's startups coming. So I think it's going to be a really interesting space to keep. And agree with you completely. I'm a huge fan, but there's still stumbling blocks for wider adoption.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that it may be as much a regulatory or legislative issue as a more so even than a technical issue, that there are companies who have solutions, but we need to make sure that the local bylaws, building bylaws, provincial or state regulations make it easier for them to sell across the country into all the markets. Yeah, and I would agree. I think we're a little more fortunate in Canada. We start with the National Building Code, and then it's hopefully adopted at the provincial level and municipalities in Canada are the creatures of the provincial government, so the provincial government can set a very high standard, but still you can go municipality to municipality and find enough differences to make it difficult.
Right.
And so, you know, I think it's a responsibility of provincial governments to give their larger cities a little more reign over how they address the climate crisis in terms of their building codes, especially as it comes to retrofit programs. So we need to give them a little more control over what they're doing, but at the same time, you know, make sure that the marketplace is open to innovation, like, you know, a modular type home that comes or a home that's assembled on site or whatever. So interesting. It's not just technical things that we have to deal with. It's regulatory as well.
Right.
Yeah. So good. So tell us about Team Zero. What is you mentioned a bit about the work you're doing with consumers, but you're also working with business as well. But tell us about the program.
Yeah. So Team Zero was formerly the Net Zero Energy Coalition.
Okay.
A great group. And I think, you know, really similar goals to what Passive House has of
right.
wanting to go to net zero homes, zero carbon impact.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little bit more set up to reach out to consumers. So a business to consumer type strategy.
Right.
And the hard work that Team Zero has done over the past 7 or 8 years is really the inventory of zero energy homes across North America. So we're just getting ready to launch the 2019 inventory.
Mm-hmm.
This will include from single family. Now you have to be zero energy ready or above to be included in this list. So anyone that's built a passive house could be included.
Mm-hmm.
We have 28,000 properties now in that listing. And there's some really great data within there, Chris, of you know, what fuel types are you using? What type of HVAC system are you using? Are you using solar panels, battery storage?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you? We've done some analysis on by state and by province, who's the top performing. I think in Canada, it's who you'd expect, with Toronto and BC leading the way.
Right.
In the US, it's California leading the way.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to do is expand that to, you know, a consumer can put their home into the inventory today.
Mm-hmm.
And then we drive a way to create community there. So I almost see it like Tesla Owners Group meets Angie's List meets Zillow, where, you know, you can see a home, you can view a case study, you might be able to chat with another consumer about, well,
mm-hmm.
you know, what excited you about Passive House? What type of heat pump did you use? I'm scared in a cold climate. Which heat pump should I get? Right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and then for homeowners, things as simple as again, what appliances do I use in a passive house? Well, you know, talk to me about a heat pump dryer. Who's used those things before? Versus a condensing dryer versus a vented dryer. What brands are good? How do we do this? Yeah. You know, 10, 15 years from now, no one will be giving this a second thought. But we have to provide some comfort for consumers as we move into this brave new world. Interestingly, next January, this January, as my guest on Building Conversations is a realtor who has a real interest in selling net zero homes and passive house buildings, and has made a niche of selling those in the Southern Ontario area, and has a lot of those things you're talking about, that you've talked about with the Team Zero and consumers, about how do we educate consumers? How does an owner of a near zero or a zero emission home get the maximum value for it? How do we educate realtors so they can talk about this to potential customers?
And the appraiser community as well, right?
Yeah, it's really exciting, actually, that you know, we've been spending a lot of time with regulators and academics and builders, and now comes the consumer. We have to make sure that those people who've invested in these buildings get the maximum return when it's time to sell it. It's just not another building, even though it may look like it. It's just not the same. So you're working with consumers, and you've got. I'm really looking forward to seeing the database because it's important, I think, for the work that all of us do when we're out talking to our various audiences, that we have that research to back us up.
Yeah,
that's a huge number of buildings, 28,000. I'm really impressed. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's 28,000 units of property. So some are in multifamily and may have 40 or 80 units.
Sure. Yeah.
But we know we're missing a lot. We know we're missing a lot of net zero and above homes. And
right.
What it does is I believe it gives all of us a rallying point. So as we talked about with EEBA, EEBA Team Zero wants it to be a zero energy ready home or above, but it starts to be data that I think, Chris, you can use and say, look, there are this many properties in Ontario already. I don't think that the government, the provinces, or the utilities understand how many of these homes are coming to market.
Right. Yeah, and what might be? I know in the as the uptick of adoption of electric vehicles, for example, really grew in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area and right across the province of Ontario. And I mentioned Ontario because I have some expertise in tracking what was going on there with my past history. And all of a sudden, the utilities, the distribution, electrical distribution companies woke up to the challenge of providing electricity for a number of electric vehicles. So, I once had a utility tell me, an urban utility tell me that if 5 people bought a Tesla and lived on the same street, they were in deep trouble. They'd have to go in and really revamp all of the electrical infrastructure so that those homes could be well served in terms of charging. At the same time, if a farmer at the end of the power line wants to charge his Tesla, may not be able to do it in some areas, or it may cause some problems in some areas. So I think the same thing is going to be happening as we electrify housing. I don't know if you've run across that in the work you're doing, that awakening government policymakers and electrical distribution companies to this coming challenge of electrification. We have to get on that.
Yeah, and while we may not work that closely with the individual states, I think we work very closely with many of the large utilities.
Yeah, good.
In the United States in particular. And there's certain things they want to support. We've all seen the ducks back grid of, we're creating a lot of renewables during the day.
Right.
Peak hours in the morning. How do you do peak load shedding? So there's a lot of great strategies. I think a lot of the utilities are thinking keenly about strategies for this, and they're offering great support. We just had a meeting with ComEd, which is our utility for Illinois, yesterday, and they're offering a $2,000 rebate for people that move toward a or zero carbon type of home.
Right.
Great support at the local level, great support from the utilities. Many have mandates to create a percentage of renewables for the grid. But I think they're all looking at what is our grid load going to look like? When is it going to look? I think, when is it going to peak?
Right.
What are the smart grid technologies? How do we start to share? I think battery storage is going to be key.
Absolutely.
I don't know about you, Chris. I'm looking at batteries right now for my house to, instead of a backup generator, to do a battery storage in the garage and
right. Yeah, and there are European countries that can tap into your car battery if you're not using your car, if it's parked at work or whatever, and can draw down from it during the day and pay you a premium for that. So you don't necessarily have to have a battery that's bolted to the wall. You could be driving it around and when you plug into the system somewhere, the utility says, hey, we need a bit of energy, can you spare some? Right. And hopefully at the end of the month you get a check from the utility, and rather than having to pay them. So all sorts of creative and really exciting things are happening. And I know as we talk to electrical producers, province to province, they're very interested in fuel switching, moving away from the carbon-based fuels, moving as many people or many buildings to clean electricity as they can. So that will all be part of the equation, because that's the passive house way is electrification. So we're not only, like you, not only having to work with the industry, with consumers, with regulators. We're excited to work with the energy producers as well, to make sure they're prepared for what's coming, because as you said at the very beginning, when it happens, and we're in the beginning of it, when this change happens, it's going to happen quickly. It has to. It's going to happen very quickly. So, it leads me to a question as a curious Canadian here, leads me to a question of how your environment, how the adoption of net zero homes and buildings in the United States is going to be affected by the election of President-elect Biden.
Well, I would say that, in my view, because we're in a republic, right? It's the United States. Mm-hmm. We're less impacted by what happens at the federal level, because at the state level, at the city level, a lot of great things were happening. I mean, we're within a handful of years of California kind of moving to electrified homes. There are great things happening, and I'll apologize for you now knowing that we have red and blue states and purple states down here, but there's great stuff happening at local levels. There's great stuff happening at state levels. So I think it was already, there were things moving in different parts of the country.
Absolutely, yeah. And you've got great leadership in at the state level. California's one example. Good leadership at the city level, New York, and the Enersprong type programs they're rolling out there. Yeah. Another great example. And I know I was actually still the Minister of Environment and Climate Change in Ontario when in the previous election. But most of the work we've been doing at a provincial level had been with state governments. So we had the cap and trade program that was set up by a Republican governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger in California. And then Jeremy Brown came along, and Governor Brown, grew it. And so we saw the fantastic leadership at the state level. So while it was a bit disappointing from the 60,000 foot level, I think we were confident that at the state level, the municipal level, good things would continue to carry on, and seems like they have been.
And I'll throw in the U.S. multinational corporations.
Right.
They have done an incredible. It didn't matter what the federal government said. I mean, we just had a ridiculous thing where President Trump got rid of the shower head mandate.
Right, right.
At the same time, we see U.S. multinational corporations that are going to net zero and have moved to generate all their power from renewables. And I really feel that we have a cohort of consumers that are really thinking critically about where is it made, how is it made, what's in it, how does it affect, what's the environmental footprint of what I'm going to do. And now we have a case where perhaps we're having the Zoom towns. People are moving. They're able to move to. Right. I always said that someday everybody's going to move back to Minneapolis and Thunder Bay because they're beautiful places, or Winnipeg.
Absolutely, yeah.
Winnipeg's a beautiful town. And now it's
Fantastic places to live. I think, speaking of this whole pandemic we're in and the whole, as you said, the Zoom towns, it's opened up a whole new world for especially in Canada, for our smaller towns and hamlets that have been withering on the vine, so to speak, as kids move away to big cities and go to school and then stay for jobs. And we've seen the same thing as has been happening in the United States, that people are looking to get out of their cramped little condominiums in downtown Toronto or Vancouver and get someplace where they have a bit of fresh air and their kids can run around on some green grass, and it's a great future. So it's going to be it is very exciting right now. I know COVID-19 has been horrible in many ways. But in some other ways, it really has been the great disruptor, as we talked about earlier on. It has been the great disruptor, and we need to capitalize on that disruption.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was, I think in Minneapolis or Winnipeg or a lot of those cities that previously people couldn't live in, they're going to be looking for what's the passive house community that I can move to in this smaller town lifestyle. I'm thinking about human health and my impact on the environment. I've got the yard for the kids. I can do school remotely. I can work remotely. I think it creates a huge opportunity for builders and developers of zero energy passive houses.
Yeah, and what we find too is so much in some of the major urban areas of Canada, so much of the land has been locked up by the big developers who are not quite ready to unleash it yet and to build on it. They're waiting, but if they're not careful, they're going to be jumped over, we'll say, by folks who want to move, and the whole Zoom town idea allows people not to be locked into these commutable areas around the major urban centers, and allows them to go live in wonderful little communities. Like, my son lives about an hour's north of Toronto. You can't really commute to Toronto back and forth. It's too far away to live there. So housing is reasonable. And he's delighted to tell me that neighbors on either side, new neighbors on either side, are folks who've moved from Toronto with little families, with little kids, and couldn't be happier, and have no intention of going back, and are quite happy to sit on their Zoom cameras all day long and do their work from his little community. It's been really good for the small communities as well to have people move in. So we live in really interesting times, and I look forward, Aaron, to some continued discussion between our groups to see how we could help reinforce, help educate, help train any of your folks, and vice versa. I think there's a lot of exciting things you're doing from a research perspective that our community needs and we'll be able to use. Before we go, we've got some questions. I see
that it's very mutual, and
great.
I think that that Team Zero represents kind of the vanguard of EEBA and people that are really pushing the edge. And we need help from your folks too on understanding more about zero carbon and passive house and passive versus active strategies in the built environment.
And I think when we spoke earlier, I had mentioned too that it's not a Passive House Institute standard, but we're really being pushed by our members here in Canada to start addressing embodied carbon. So we've been developing, based on some good research, some answers and some input, so that it's not just operational carbon we need to address, it's embodied carbon, and it's the total carbon footprint of our buildings we have to address. So excited to have some conversations and see where we can go in the months ahead. Is there anything else? Have I missed anything, Aaron? Is there any other points you want to make before we move to some questions?
No, I don't think so. I'd love to hear some questions.
Okay. So Deb, we'll get you to come back on, and Aaron and I will stay on camera and with our mics on, but we'll get Deb Knopp, who's our operations manager, by the way, at Passive House Canada, to come back on and lead us through some of the questions.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. And we've actually, Aaron, you have answered some of the questions as we've been talking here, but I'll just go through and see if anybody wanted to reiterate a bit.
Okay.
We have one question about the data and collection, the collection of data, and when this information might be available and in what format.
Yeah, so the 2019 report will come out right before Christmas. And because of COVID, it kind of became it was supposed to come out in the first quarter, second quarter of 2019, and it kind of got delayed till now. But it'll be a nice snapshot of those 28,000 properties that are zero energy ready or above.
Good.
So again, you can expect a full report. If you go to EEBA.org, you'll see the Zero Homes Inventory tab. You can go there and watch for updates. And again, there's another tab where you can load your home. You can load a neighborhood of homes. We just had a zero energy builder in Colorado, Thrive Home Builders, that loaded several hundred homes that they built to zero energy ready standard. So that was great to get in the database. But look for that right before the holidays.
Okay, and perhaps we'll have a link to it from our resource page as well. So if anyone stumbles across our that we can direct them to you folks in that research. Good question.
Okay, and actually to add on to that as well, there was another question. If any of the information you've just said was missed, there is a recording of this webinar as well. So not to worry about that. That was asked as well. And
we will have this on our YouTube channel. It usually takes a day or so for us to get it up.
Yes. Okay. So another question here too, maybe for Aaron, is where do we go to learn how to best retrofit existing houses? There is the concern that maybe you have to tear down all the existing buildings and start over.
Yeah. I think that retrofit is. I can tell you that when I was a builder, I was a custom builder. I built maybe 15 homes a year, but I also did a lot of high-end remodeling, and I carried that same standard. I was building as efficient of houses as I could build in the early 2000s, and I always brought that. I told people, we can do a complete energy retrofit. We can look at state or province rebates that are available. There's some things we can take care of in your house while we're here to make it better. So I think you've probably seen this too, Chris, that a lot of the really great learnings initially on passive house or zero energy were perhaps from multifamily and then came down to residential. And I think what we're trying to do is use that as a carbon copy and say, okay, now we have it at new home residential, but you can take the same learnings to a retrofit. You can do zero energy. You can do passive house within a retrofit. Maybe it's tougher on the passive house because you can't get to the whole envelope. But boy, I've seen some great technologies out there for really addressing the air tightness of the whole envelope, even though you're only retrofitting part, right?
Yeah, there's lots you can do. From a passive house perspective, there's a standard called Interfit that we talk about. That an Interfit, which is the retrofit for an existing building, can get you to minimums or easily 75% energy savings over the previous building, and with new technology coming along, whether it be panelized systems to clad the exterior of the building or improved heat recovery ventilation systems. There's really exciting stuff that's going on. So from our perspective, we talk about Interfit, and you're right. There's a lot of savings. For major cities, their GHG emission savings really will come from retrofits, deep energy retrofits, more so than from changing regulations around new buildings. And so there's lots that's going to be happening. The federal government in Canada has announced a number of programs to help everybody from residential homeowners right through to multi-residential, mid to high-rise units, retrofit to very low energy usage standards. So from our perspective, look for Interfit, but there's lots of ways to start moving to zero. Not everybody can do Interfit. You're as Aaron pointed out, there could be some building envelope issues, but let's start going down that path.
And I would say from the mechanic side of it, EEBA has a great learning management system.
Great.
We're teaching people every day. We have a Houses That Work program, a high performance HVAC program, a Path to Zero Energy Ready Home program. So we're trying to put all the best building science out there, and that should be applicable to builders and remodelers.
Yeah, excellent. And the Team Zero, I'm hoping we'll have that consumer information. Will be there, and we're happy to help any way we can. Deb, you have another question?
Yeah, I think we've got time for squeeze one more in here.
Okay.
What is the future of on-site hydrogen generation by water electrolysis from solar power and fuel cells for power backup?
Well,
Chris,
Aaron, any thoughts?
Well, what I can tell you is probably not going to answer your question, but we've obviously been doing a lot of education around the cold climate air source heat pumps, which are really fantastic and get down to a really low temperature. Although Minnesota and Canada are in a colder climate zone, so we've been working with the Cold Climate Research Center, and there are some thermal heat pumps as well. What I don't know about, and Chris, I don't know if you do, is the hydrogen part of it.
Right.
I haven't seen any technology that's really that close for a consumer to be able to use something like that. And you still have to create hydrogen from somewhere, right? So generally you're going to crack natural gas and so I don't know. It's out of my league.
Yeah. I'm not a scientist when it comes to this. I know that there are a number of jurisdictions in Canada that have been testing, looking at the systems, but it's been larger ones. It's Ontario, for example, has been considering using hydrogen to fuel its commuter train system, even over electrification, because it could be simpler, and a number of trains that were designed, locomotives that were designed in Canada are being tested in Germany as we speak to see about the potential for hydrogen there. I know there's a few other projects going on across the country for the storage of energy, non-battery storage of energy by creating hydrogen for use when the wind stops and the sun goes down. When it comes to household use, I'm not aware of any technology that exists that meets the cost and efficiency that would be required. That's not to say that, as we talked about the virtue of disruption, that there isn't some company out there, researchers out there who aren't putting the finishing touches on some type of electrolysis device that
but I think
more energy out than puts in.
To continue the analogy, Chris, it will probably, if it's going to happen, I think that Honda and Toyota are more interested in hydrogen. It'll probably happen at the car level. It'll be small scale. If it's then going to come to residential, it'll come out of that. But I think we're some years away.
Well, I will say, since you mentioned transportation, I do wish I had paid more attention to my last name, because there was this company in BC, called Ballard Power Systems, that does the whole hydrogen to electricity thing. Full disclaimer, not related to them. I wish I had paid attention to them when their stock was very low. Anyway, Deb, you got another question for us?
We do. We're running out of time here.
Okay, we'll be fast.
Okay, yeah. This might not be a fast one. How do you see our tackling of the joined impact on policymakers mentioned in the discussion earlier? Renewable resources, for example, on gas versus electricity. What should we do more as professionals, researchers, consultants, and industry at large?
Take it away, Aaron. I've got my, let you go first.
I forgot to tell Chris, I'm a failed politician. He's the successful politician. So maybe Chris, you want to take a stab at that for Canadian.
I'll take a quick. There's no such thing as a failed politician. There's just people who've tried and not been elected. But trying is a sign of success. I would, there's a number of things. First of all, support organizations like Aaron's, like Passive House Canada, that are out there working with, whether it be academics or government. I think perhaps it sounds like Passive House Canada does a little more government relations, government education, and so support organizations that are doing that. We're big on forming coalitions because really we're a small organization compared to some of the big ones. So we're out forming partnerships with Energy Efficiency Canada and larger organizations with deeper pockets and more people. But as an individual, as a professional, I can't stress enough, and I say this as a former elected politician, as a former politician, that when someone called our office, when someone wrote an original letter and email and sent it to our office, all of this is tracked. All of this has impact. Your voice is never too inconsequential, and it's amazing how working together, speaking to your elected officials directly can alter government policy. So support the organizations that are doing the right thing from your perspective, but don't be afraid yourself to write your elected officials, whether it be municipal, provincial, state, federal, and tell them what you think they should be doing. You'd be surprised. You may think that you're yelling into the great chasm and no one will respond. You may not get a letter back, but people will take note of what you're saying. So I would greatly encourage people to get active and support organizations that are active, but on their own turf, write their politicians, write to their local community newspapers, and have the voice heard that way as well.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And, there are great organizations out there. I think that's one of the reasons that Chris and I wanted to come together. And I think that collaboration is the new leadership. The more we can show that this force is bigger across North America, the more that will help us be counted and drive change. But yeah, it's still true in North America today that we all can make a difference. We can get involved. We can, I think our big thing is commenting on the new Energy Star program or the new Zero Energy Home program. And instead of there being a community that perhaps drags that program back, there's a that says, no, we want it to push even further ahead.
Right.
So we're involved at that code level with state code bodies, with the federal code bodies, and really driving for positive change. But yeah, we all have a voice.
Absolutely. So use it.
And I think Chris is right. It's been tough years for small nonprofits. I was not on the list from Mrs. Bezos. Did you see she gave $4.7 billion out? I didn't get a check. Did you get a check, Chris?
I missed it. Maybe it's in my mailbox. I'll have to go check when we're done.
Probably in the box.
Probably. Yep.
Give to support great organizations like Passive House. It's really needed in these times.
Yeah, and that's I agree. I like the comment about collaboration as the new leadership. So we're building those collaborative efforts across the country. There's not, it may pain some of us to say this, Passive House purists, but there's more than one pathway to net zero. We have a particular pathway, but we support others in their journeys, and that's that together will make a difference. So listen, Aaron, thank you very much for your time today. And
my pleasure.
I know we're going to have continued discussion, and we'll be supporting each other's efforts right across North America. So we'll have a follow-up phone call, no doubt, soon. And in the meantime, I will carry on and wrap up today's webinar. I've got some information, so I will invite us both to turn off our cameras and microphones, and I'll wrap things up. But thank you very much for being here.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yes, happy holidays, and thank you for your work at EEBA. It's inspirational what you're doing. So let me turn my camera off, folks, and I'll go back to sharing my screen and carrying on with the last of today's seminar. I spoke about the training that Passive House Canada does. I know we're heading into the holiday season, and perhaps the last thing we want to think about is January. But January is fast approaching. It's a new year. There's all sorts of exciting things that are happening in the near zero building world. So we have some training for you, some professional development for you. We have 2 pathways to Passive House Designer Consultant certification. These are 3 courses that will really help you become a Passive House Designer Consultant certifier. And you know, if you can build, if you can design to Passive House Institute standards, you can build and design to virtually any other green standard that is out there. So I always encourage people to shoot for this standard, and you will be able to work at any level of green building. The difference between these 2 courses, and these are all in the handouts in today's deck, is we have a course that runs on the weekdays, but we're also running weekend sessions. The weekday courses start January the 11th. The weekend courses start on the 16th. And we want to make sure, and this is the beauty of digital delivery, we want to make sure that as many people across our country can take these courses and they're not hampered by time constraints. So some information there. For those of you in the industry, controlling water and vapor, we have a master class on that, from rain screens to vapor barriers. That's an online course that begins January the 29th. And of course, you can find out all you need to know about these 3 professional development courses at passivehousecanada.com. So give us a call, send us an email if you have any questions there. And I will say, as I mentioned to Aaron earlier on, Kelly Wilson is January's guest on Building Conversations. And Kelly is a realtor with Home Group Realty and with a real interest in not only passive house, but also zero energy buildings. And she will talk to us from a consumer's perspective, from a realtor's perspective. So it'll be kind of interesting. You know, a lot of our conversations have been technical over the past few months. So this will be an interesting opportunity to talk to someone who really is working to raise awareness, not just with consumers, but also her fellow professionals about near zero passive house buildings. So there we are. Hope to see you next month. So happy holidays, everyone. Thank you very much for your time and attention today. It was really interesting talking to Aaron. I hope you get a chance to check out his organization in the States. As I said, he has members in the States and in Canada, and we look forward to being able to work with him in future. So once again, happy holidays. Be safe, everyone. This too will come to an end soon enough, but be safe in the meantime, and we'll see you next month. Bye for now.